Is that did you just want to come race these stock cars, or did that have a whole lot to do with it?
No, so I think for me, at the time when I was in open wheel racing, the two series were split. It was Champ Car, and that's what I was in, and there was IRL. And it sounds kind of weird when I say this, but the two series they weren't going to last separated, so they were going to merge. Well, at the time, IRL racing was mostly ovals, and I just didn't want to race consistently Indy cars on ovals, and I didn't know the team that I was driving for in Champ Car wasn't going to move over to the IRL series. Jerry Forsyth hated Tony George at the time, and so I didn't know if I was going to have a ride. Sponsored by Red Bull when I was racing Champ Car, and they were starting in NASCAR. It's how I got my foot in the door. But the funny part of that was talking about flying commercial and flying private was Chip Weil was my first PR guy. I ran the Bill Davis trucks, and he kept calling me wine and cheese the whole time because I was an open wheel guy. Right. And he's like, oh man, I don't know if you can handle it over here, wine and cheese guy. And then, like an hour later, he was cussing at the plane person because their private plane was going to be delayed. And I was like, I've never been on a private plane in my life. I'm like, wine and cheese, like you're complaining about your private plane not being on time. So it was definitely different in a lot of ways when I came over here.
Let me ask you this: you mentioned Red Bull. Red Bull looked like they had all the money in the world, and it looked like they did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they came in, and I think this is a great example of the sport that we've got today, because it doesn't really matter how much money you can hire. The best of the best of the best, but if those guys are not on the same page, it ain't gonna work. And it was a struggle there for Red Bull. My question is, you think they ever come back?
I don't think they ever come back, no. So what Red Bull has always been about, and Dietrich, the owner, passed away, right. But he had two real loves. It was actually three loves. He had soccer, Formula One, airplanes in general. He had the coolest private collection that I'd ever got to see. But Red Bull, besides those three things, was always about making a splash and then leaving. And that's why you see the weird things that they do, where it's the ice skating luge, the building planes and flying, like all this stuff that
build an airplane out of paper and push it off a pier.
Exactly. So
great
they
stuff.
like making a splash, and then they're like, once it gets kind of boring, they're done with it. And I think that was for him, that was kind of why it went away, because it wasn't a passion of his. NASCAR wasn't, and on top of it, commercially, they were trying to bring in cola. Like they thought they were just going to do what they usually did, throw their money out there and everything was going to be fine. Well, we know how NASCAR works. You don't just come in and go, hey, we're building a new brand of cola and we're just going to bring it into every racetrack and you're going to like it. And they're like, it's not how that works here.
Yeah.
So.
Remember, they hired Jay Fry, who now runs IndyCar.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy, and had done miraculous things with a lot of much smaller teams. They put Jay Fry in charge, and then they won't let him do anything.
Yeah. Well,
if he had to buy a lug nut, he had to call overseas and get permission to buy a lug nut.
And that was the crazy thing at the beginning. Even before Jay, it was Marty Gaunt, which knew the NASCAR side of it. Then Gunther Steiner, which runs Haas Formula One. He came over, and so watching them butt heads for a couple of years, that was interesting.
Pretty entertaining.
Yeah. Here we are. I asked you this question a few minutes ago. Same, different crowd. We got 2 races to go, dude. And we've heard a lot about a lot of people that have told us what they're doing next year. You're not one of them. You're not one of them. Dude.
I've asked him 38 times. He won't tell me
Well,
nothing.
I know, but that's you. I mean, I've asked him 2 times. Only the second time.
Give it a shot. Yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to have a college race driving suit on next year. I can promise that.
Don't know what series you're going to be in, right?
Could be all of them. Who knows?